She stood quietly in the corner of the lavish party, wearing a simple dress and a shy smile. The room sparkled with laughter, designer outfits, and judgmental stares. No one noticed her when she walked in, or worse, they noticed just enough to whisper behind their wine glasses. Some smirked, some scoffed. Who invited her? A woman muttered. Probably one of the helpers. Another guest sneered, loud enough for her to hear. But she stayed calm, not letting their harsh words break her grace. She wasn't flashy. She didn't wear diamonds or designer labels. She didn't talk loudly or try to impress anyone. And that was enough for the room to look down on her. After all, in their eyes, she didn't belong in a place full of wealth and status. But what they didn't know was this simple woman held a story no one could have imagined. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was strength. Her presence wasn't random. It was meant to be. While the guests continued to mock her, sipping their champagne and laughing at their own arrogance, something changed. A sudden shift in energy, a faint vibration under the ground. And then, a sound no one expected. Outside, in the middle of the grand estate, a helicopter began to descend. The laughter faded. People rushed to the windows. The loud spinning blades cut through their gossip like a knife through silk. Whispers turned into stunned silence. Who could it be? A politician? A billionaire? Everyone held their breath, waiting for the door to open. But she just stood there, still and steady, because she already knew who was inside. And when the door finally opened, the man who stepped out wasn't just any guest. He was her husband. And what happened next left the entire party speechless. As the helicopter's blades slowed, the guests stared in disbelief. The man who stepped out wore a crisp suit, sunglasses hiding his eyes, and the kind of quiet confidence that made the whole world pause. Some guests leaned in closer to the windows, trying to recognize him. Others whispered among themselves, confused and curious. But no one had any clue who he was until he walked straight toward her. The same woman they had mocked, the one they called ordinary, suddenly became the center of attention. A hush fell over the room as he approached her with purpose. He didn't look at anyone else. He didn't greet the hosts or the influential faces. His eyes, though hidden, seemed focused only on her. People started pulling out their phones, wondering if this was a celebrity moment. The hosts looked embarrassed, unsure if they had overlooked someone important. One woman who had laughed at her earlier now bit her lip nervously. And just then, someone whispered, "Wait, isn't that Adam Mirza, the billionaire tech investor?" A wave of shock rippled through the room, but the woman didn't flinch. She didn't act surprised. She just smiled, not to impress, but because she knew the truth was finally unfolding. The truth none of them had expected. What no one at the party knew was that before the fame and fortune, Adam had lived a very different life. And in that life, when no one believed in him, she did. Long before the helicopters and high-rise offices, she was there standing beside him when he had nothing. Now, the same people who judged her for being too simple couldn't understand how a woman like her could be married to a man like him. But they were about to find out, because what happened next would change the way they looked at her forever. Adam walked through the entrance like he didn't even notice the stairs. But of course, he did. He always noticed everything, especially when it came to her. He reached her, gently took her hand, and without saying a word, kissed her forehead. The silence in the room was deafening. The same people who had rolled their eyes at her now watched with dropped jaws. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence beside him said it all. The host couple awkwardly stepped forward, trying to recover the mood. "Mr. Mirza, we didn't know you were joining us," the man said, forcing a smile. Adam glanced at him, then at the other guests, and gave a faint nod. "I wasn't planning to, but I heard how my wife was being treated." His words were calm, but they hit like thunder. People shifted uncomfortably, suddenly remembering every careless comment they had made earlier in the evening. Behind the scenes, another layer of the story began to unfold. Just a few days ago, the woman had overheard these very guests mocking Adam, questioning his past and spreading rumors. They had called her lucky, suggested she had tricked him into marriage. But what they didn't know was that Adam's company almost collapsed 3 years ago, and it was her who sold her family land to help him rebuild. She didn't tell anyone, not even him, at the time, and now those whispers had turned into regrets. But not everyone was ready to change. Among the guests was Natasha, Adam's ex, who once left him for someone wealthier. Tonight she was there too, watching everything unfold. Her smile faded as realization hit. She hadn't just lost Adam, she had underestimated the woman beside him, yet the real storm hadn't even begun. Because what Adam revealed next wasn't just about their relationship, it would shake everyone in the room. But for now, he simply held her hand tighter. As the room held its breath, the air in the room had shifted completely. What started as laughter and judgment had turned into silence and unease. Adam scanned the crowd slowly, like he was choosing his words carefully. The guests, once so full of opinions, now looked down, unsure where to place their eyes. Even Natasha, who always carried herself like she owned every room, seemed smaller now, her eyes flickering between Adam and his wife, unsure whether to stay or slip away unnoticed. Then Adam took a step forward and spoke clearly. "Before I say anything else, I want to ask something." He paused. "How many of you judged my wife tonight just based on how she looked?" No one answered. The room stayed frozen. He looked around, letting the question hang heavy in the air. "You all saw her as simple, unfit for your circles." Some even laughed. His voice stayed calm, but every word was sharp. "She may not wear expensive jewelry or brag about wealth, but do you know what she does wear? Dignity, kindness, loyalty." His voice cracked slightly, just enough to show that this wasn't rehearsed, it was personal. The tension in the room thickened when Adam reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. 3 years ago, when my company was on the edge of collapse, one person stood beside me, not for what I had, but for who I was. He opened the paper slowly. "She sold her land, everything she had, to help me restart. And she never told anyone, not even me." Gasps echoed. Eyes widened. The same people who once whispered insults were now whispering disbelief. Then came a moment of stillness. One of the board members from Adam's company, who was present at the party, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "There's something else they all deserve to know," he said, and just like that, another secret was about to surface, one that could turn the entire evening upside down. All eyes turned to the board member, Mr. Karim Siddiqui, a man known for being quiet and calculated. He stepped forward slowly, his voice steady but laced with tension. "There's something Adam never shared publicly," he said, his eyes locked on the crowd. "And maybe he wouldn't have, but after what I witnessed tonight, I believe everyone here deserves to know the full truth." Adam tensed slightly but didn't interrupt. His wife looked at him, confused, sensing something she wasn't prepared for either. Mr. Siddiqui unfolded a document from his coat, raising it just enough for everyone to see. "When the company was going under, yes, she sold her land, but she also did something else." He looked directly at Natasha and the others who had mocked her earlier. "She invested under a different name, using every last rupee, and became the company's second largest silent shareholder." A collective gasp spread through the guests. Even Adam looked stunned. "What?" he whispered under his breath. "She didn't just save the company. She owns a part of it," Karim continued. "And the reason we never mentioned it before is because she never claimed credit. She didn't ask for power or titles. She only cared about one thing, helping Adam." Now the mood shifted from tension to disbelief. The woman they called Simple had been sitting at the top with Adam the entire time, not just as his wife, but as one of the reasons his empire survived. Adam turned to her, eyes wide. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. She gave a soft smile. "Because it was never about being known. It was about keeping you standing." But before the emotions could settle, Natasha stepped forward. "If that's all true," she said sharply, then you should probably tell them what's coming next. Everyone froze. Her voice held something darker, something no one expected, and whatever she was about to reveal would change everything. The room stood still, every pair of eyes locked on Natasha. Her tone was sharp, but beneath it was something else, resentment, maybe regret. She took a step closer, raising her voice just enough. You all think this woman saved him, that she's the reason Adam's company survived. But there's something she doesn't know either. Adam's expression shifted, protective now, his hand reaching instinctively for his wife's. What are you talking about, Natasha? Natasha pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A large screen nearby flickered to life with a document and email chain. While Adam's company was falling apart, someone was trying to buy out his patents quietly. The deal nearly went through, until one anonymous investor blocked it at the last moment. She paused, then looked straight at Adam's wife. That investor was your father. Adam's breath caught. Her father? He repeated, stunned. Yes, Natasha confirmed. He found out about the buyout attempt and blocked it without telling either of you. He used a fake company name and covered his tracks. He protected Adam's future and his daughters. Adam's wife stood frozen, 1,000 thoughts racing through her. Her father had passed away a year ago. He'd never spoken a word of this. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from the revelation, but from the quiet love that had protected her in ways she never saw coming. The guests watched, speechless. The woman they had mocked was now surrounded by layers of loyalty, sacrifice, and silent strength from her, from Adam, and even from a father no longer alive. But just as the moment settled into something tender, Kareem's phone buzzed. He looked at it and frowned. Adam, we have a problem. Adam glanced over. What now? The rival company is trying again. They've reopened the buyout proposal, and this time, they're using your own board. And with that, the final twist hit. The night wasn't over. The fight had only just begun. Adam's jaw tightened as he looked at Kareem. The room, still heavy with shock, now felt like a ticking clock. How long do we have? Adam asked calmly. Not long, Kareem replied. The deal is set for review in 2 days. If we don't act now, control could slip through your hands. Adam turned to his wife, the woman who had stood beside him through every storm. We'll face this together, he said. She nodded without hesitation. There was no fear in her eyes, only trust. That night, after the guests left, something had changed. The same people who had mocked her were now quiet, reflective. A few even apologized. The words felt small in comparison to what had unfolded. Natasha left without saying anything more, her silence speaking louder than her earlier outburst. Over the next 48 hours, Adam and his wife worked side by side, digging into every file, every signature. With Kareem's help and a few loyal board members, they exposed the betrayal. The rival company's plan collapsed before it could reach the final table. Adam retained full control, and more importantly, he cleaned out those who had plotted. From within. In the weeks that followed, people started seeing her differently. Not because of the helicopter moment or the wealth, but because they finally understood who she really was, a woman of quiet strength, fierce loyalty, and a heart that never gave up. She never needed to prove herself. Life did it for her. Adam's company grew stronger, but now it had a new co-chair, his wife, the silent shareholder no one saw coming. She didn't need the spotlight, but she stood in it with grace when it found her, and as the sun set behind their home, Adam looked at her and said softly, they saw a simple woman. But I always knew you were the strongest person in the room, and that, truly, was the real story all along.